Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. And I got to say, Ken and I think, have one of the best jobs going right now. Not only do we get to spend our time with all of you who we just can't wait to, we look forward to it every time we do this show, but boy, oh boy, it harkens back to something Sammy Cosentino, Sammy the Scarf, to all you Kenny and Rennyites out there, had said on our show. The kind of parting thoughts that he left us with after last Saturday's game was, you know what, regardless of what's happening, and we love to debate what's happening with the Jets and the lines and how they're playing the systems, all that kind of stuff. But his point was, appreciate what you have here in this team because it's meaningful hockey. And I sure got to say, everything that we see from the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, there was a point tonight where I took a look and you see Connor Mcdavid doing what he's doing out there. You saw the ability of both those two teams, and then the goaltending duel that happened out there tonight. And it just, I thought, geez, you could be an Arizona Coyotes fan, right? You could be a Buffalo Sabres fan whose team has been lost in the woods for however long. But being a Winnipeg Jets fan right now, I think, boy, oh boy, what a good gig it is for all you out there. And to be able to talk about the Winnipeg Jets, what a good gig it is for us, because there is always a lot to talk about. And man, oh man, is it fun watching those games. So if we're going to talk about it, we might as well bring in the guy that does the best job of talking about it. You know him as Ken Wiebe, but you know him even more by his music. Here's Enter Kenny. Ken Wiebe, my friend, it's great to see you. How has your day been going?
Well, Sean, it doesn't get much better. Fun day. We've got a double header of activity. Tried my first Nashville hot chicken for lunch at Brazen Hall. We had a good start to the day there as well. Just an awesome conversation with Aaron Portzline and Jim Hewson. Entertaining hockey game, and we'll end off the fun day here. Well, I'll end off writing a column for the morning after we sign off at about 12:30 a.m. But nice to spend the rest of the hours of this beautiful day with you and our audience. Man, that was such an entertaining and fun hockey game, and we thought we would learn a lot. I mean, we know that players and coaches always like to kind of downplay the whole measuring stick element, Sean. But we learned a lot about the Winnipeg Jets in the last two games. They're a good team. The Oilers are a very good team. The Jets allowed one even-strength goal in 2 games, and it came on a fantastic 1-on-3 rush by the best player in hockey. So I would say that all of our questions about how the Jets improved defense core and commitment to defensive zone play that were going to be answered in the last 2 games were answered. And I think that they answered the bell, with aplomb, to be quite honest. And were it not for a power play that has now gone 1 for 16, the Jets would be looking at 4 of 4 points instead of 3. I think the Jets would take 3 of 4 against the Oilers every single time. And when the only beef against a team is a power play that went 0 for 5 and was able to convert a 4-minute double minor in the stretch drive. I mean, that's a pretty impressive showing, and it's not just one player. This was a complete effort, a strong goaltending game, and honestly, it took an otherworldly performance by Stuart Skinner. I said this on the pregame show with Kelly and Trevor Kidd. On page about 16 or 18 of the coach's playbook, the coach, after a long road trip, puts his backup in so that his team is on its toes, and that's what we saw today. But as much as we heard about Edmonton having more energy, Sean, in this game, the Jets pretty much, you wouldn't say dominated, but they were not hanging on for dear life again. They
No.
dictated a good chunk of this hockey game, and when you do that, it's incredibly impressive to me, anyway.
Yeah, you know what? So I don't think the Jets dominated by any means. I think
No.
here we're having some people in the conversation saying if it wasn't for Skinner, I think it would have been an entirely different game. Totally agree with that. As I agree with the statement that if it wasn't for Connor Hellebuck, it would have been an entirely different game. But I mean, I again, Connor Hellebuck, I thought this was the best game that Connor Hellebuck has played so far this year. I know it kind of doesn't end up in his favor. But to your point, you had said it. You had pointed it out early in the week. You thought he was getting better and better and better. I completely agree that he's gone from 3 games ago to last game he got better to this game he got better. He's really rounding into form. I gotta say, Ken, it feels to me like you go back to that New York Islanders game that the Jets lose 2-0. Sure. And they walk out of that, and what's the impression that they were left with? They kept saying it to a man, and Paul Maurice would have gone into that game after that room and said, guys, that's what playoff hockey looks like. That team over there that came that close to getting past the Tampa Bay Lightning for 2 straight years and potentially could have been Stanley Cup champs, that's what playoff hockey looks like. I think, Ken, and I wanted your take on this, I think ever since that happened and the Jets came out and said it, and this is why I love teams coming out and saying stuff. I love them putting it on record, because to me, if you put it out there, it's been said, and you have to either follow your words or get exposed by them later. I think the Winnipeg Jets ever since then have turned around and been saying, okay, let's see what our playoff style of hockey is, and let's go play that for the next little while. And I thought that was so the other night, and you were saying this, I thought this was the Edmonton Oilers. The other night wasn't the Edmonton Oilers, and I'm not saying anything. I'm not trying to belittle the Jets' last game. I think the Jets played the game in front of them and did it properly and won that game. They come out tonight against the Edmonton Oilers team that is playing more like what I think the Edmonton Oilers truly are, and they still replicate that kind of result, like you said, of shutting down that team at 5-on-5 for the most part, and really turning that into a grinded-out game. Hey, Edmonton Oilers, you want to beat the Winnipeg Jets? You're not going to get to do it 7-5. I know you love the track meets that we used to have against each other, and we kind of love them too, but we've got a little bit of a different goal this year, and that goal is going to really be paying off in April, May, and June. That's the hope for us. And I just really think that the Jets are getting, maybe it's a little bit early, but I think they are getting under their belts the feel of the kind of hockey it is required to win in the playoffs. Tonight for me is another example of that. I thought they were, even though they lose that game, I thought they were better tonight than they were in the previous game. And a lot of people have said it in here. I couldn't agree more. To me, shootouts are meaningless. Yeah, it leads to points, but I don't think the Jets are going to be a cusp team. I don't think they need an extra point here or there. I mean, it's going to definitely it plays a role in positioning, but it doesn't play a role for me in which team is better. To me, I don't walk away from this and say, okay, the Jets won one the other night. They're the better team now. The Oilers pushed back. You go to overtime, and to me, that's it. That's where it stops in my mind of the competition of who's better than who, because 3-on-3 doesn't matter in the postseason. The shootout doesn't matter in the postseason. It's one of the reasons in the past that I never got overly excited about the Jets winning games at 3-on-3, even though they're so good at it, right? And winning in the shootout, Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele were stopped tonight, but boy, they're hard to stop. But I never get overly excited with that, because I think that the Jets are built to win in those situations more than the average or even the above average NHL team, but that's meaningless in the playoffs. It means nothing. Just like to me tonight, that final result means nothing. What means something to me is the way that the Winnipeg Jets went out and shut down 2 of the game's greatest players again for the second straight game, for the most part, other than the very Mcdavidian effort. But I just think I look at this game here, and if I'm a Jets fan, I don't walk away from that game tonight with any sense of disappointment whatsoever.
Yeah, no doubt. And you have to give Dave Tippett some credit. 2 things, Sean, and one of them you stressed on our last post-game show. He had the courage to keep McDavid and Draisaitl apart. Leon Draisaitl was an absolute beast in this game.
Yep.
But another quick thing for me. A lot of people were wondering about the matchup. Mark Scheifele went head-to-head with Connor McDavid at 5-on-5 and outscored him. Or no, they were even. Sorry, 1-1, right? Their line had 1, McDavid had 1. But it didn't come against that line. Exactly.
Yeah, Lowry came out on that.
And I give Dave Tippett credit. This is not a knock on the Jets' third pairing. The third pairing has been solid, but top pairing guys can get beat 1-on-1 or 1-on-2 against Connor McDavid, and the third pairing, fell victim to the opposite end of the highlight reel. I mean, it was just an exceptional play. But at the same time, the Jets went head-to-head in that matchup and did a good job in it. And I think the Dubois line was very good against Draisaitl for the most part when they went head-to-head also. Draisaitl just made some incredible plays. And like I mentioned, I mean, the Jets' power play was not good enough. And on the flip side, the Jets' penalty kill was outstanding against the best power play in the NHL. So, again, I get it, people are up in arms, should have won the game on the power play. Hang on a second here. If you go even against the Edmonton Oilers, who have the best power play in the NHL, you probably had a pretty good night. Now, at the same time, I agree with them. The Jets should have won that game. I mean, you get a 4-minute power play late in the game, you got to convert. They're a top 10 power play. They're still a top 10 power play despite going 1 for their last 16. And it's not like they're not trying different things. They tried. They went back to the well. They got Kyle Connor back out there on the top unit, where Josh Morrissey's been doing a nice job. They try to mix it up a little bit. I mean, that's smart coaching. I mean, in overtime, I know some people in the chat didn't like it. I love that they went 4 forwards. They're going for the, they're pushing to try to win. You're not playing not to lose. You're trying to win. I mean, that's what you do. I mean, I understand folks are wondering about Blake Wheeler. Blake Wheeler's been one of the most productive players on the power play in the last 5 years. So that's why he's out there on the power play. I mean, his job is to distribute the puck. So the one thing I wouldn't have on my bingo card, Sean, and that's, I think, 1 point for Wheeler on the power play. And also Kyle Connor. Only one of his 12 goals has come on the man advantage. He's the league leader in 5-on-5 goals. It's only a matter of time before Kyle Connor gets going on the power play. And I think the same for Wheeler. I understand that nothing has come easily for him offensively, but that's one of his best skills, is his ability to distribute. So I believe that he's going to get going as well. So interesting times. I mean, I think the Jets played very well. And as you mentioned, I mean, a lot of things. Paul Maurice, you could see it on his face in the postgame. That's probably the best 2 games the Jets have played all year. And it doesn't matter what a penalty shot contest does at the end of that game. If the Jets play the way they did the last 2 nights, they're going to be in the mix as one of the top teams in the Western Conference. There is no doubt about it. It's still a hard thing to do over that stretch of time, but that is a fact. The Jets have found their template, and if they play to their template, they're going to be very good.
Well, and it's interesting because the template that you're talking about, Ken, I think especially in games like that, I think the ask from Paul Maurice is that I don't want you guys going out and scoring your way to wins anymore. That's not what I want from you anymore. In games like this, there has to be a different priority. And I'll say this, you talked about Blake Wheeler not getting that production. And yeah, the power play is a little bit of a different animal because, clearly tonight, I thought I was watching the way the Oilers handled it. I thought I gave Paul Maurice credit last game, and I still give Paul Maurice credit for what he's done with the team and keeping those guys off the board the way they did. I give Dave Tippett credit for tonight. He came out, to your point, he realized smushing those 2 top players and the nuclear option doesn't work. He had a commitment to playing lines 1 through 3 on this evening, even though I thought line 3 of theirs, Ryan McLeod, was showing warts throughout the game, and more so as the game wore on. I thought Lowry's line clearly won that battle. But I give him credit because I don't think that Oilers team can beat the Jets if they fall into that trap of just trying to win with those 2 players. So I give him complete and total credit for what he was for how he handled the bench here tonight. I take a little bit of I keep seeing people here say that if the Winnipeg Jets scored on a couple of those shots, this game's a blowout. I didn't see that as a blowout at all, Ken. I saw that as a perfectly even game. I thought the Jets were a little bit more inclined to just throw pucks on the net from every single angle. I think that kind of led to the shot count that we saw from them.
And they had 7 on the late power play, right? I mean, the shots were almost even until the 4-minute power play.
For sure. To me, that's an even game. And what I liked about it, and when I say even, I say that as a compliment to both teams, because there were times when the Winnipeg Jets went out and got the puck and took it down into the zone and were absolutely dominant. There was a Scheifele shift at the, about 5-minute mark or something like that of the second period, or maybe I think it was the 9-minute mark. They went out and had just an absolutely dominant shift. And then Lowry's line followed up and came out and continued that dominance. And there was just that push. And then the Oilers went down to the other end of the ice and then did it back. Like, to me, it was a real, like, we talk about these games, we like to use the boxing analogy of the punch and the counter punch. That was that game. It was like two heavyweights slugging each other, giving them everything they had. And I just, I mean, again, I go back to the original point I made, and that point that Sam made, which just got Sammy the Scarf made, that which kind of opened my eyes a little bit to that idea of, like, my God, are we lucky to be able to talk hockey about a team like this, that plays like this, that has the options that they do. I saw tonight as being just a perfectly even match. That's a draw in my mind. I know Edmonton gets the extra point, but I'll say this, Ken. If you could, get out the truth serum and throw a bag over Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid's head, throw them in the back of a car, give them the truth serum, Ken, I think I'm going to end up in a police report if I keep going with this analogy.
You should push rewind here and you should reset here quickly. You're making me a little nervous. I do not want to be an accomplice to this crime. I'm sorry.
Hey, we're all in this together, including the chat room. So you're all as complicit as I am in this. But what I'm trying to say is, if you ask those guys about how, the difficult teams to play in the league right now, Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, where do you think they'd rank the Winnipeg Jets in that conversation?
Well, they'd be right up there. I mean, nothing came easy for the Oilers, and you're right. I mean, this could have been a 4-4 game going into overtime, and you would have still said both goalies played pretty well. I mean, that's just the way that it is. And I mean, my timeline is getting blown up by people saying, well, Hellebuyck gave up a little bit of an opening on the blocker side on both goals. I'm like, it happens. I mean, it's a penalty shot contest. And this is the thing. I mean, Kyle Turris, like, look at his career. Dennis said the career numbers before he went. I mean, he's got a high percentage on shootouts, even though on Tuesday night he didn't get one shift in the third period. So, the shootout is a bit of a crapshoot, as we know. But both teams played solid. Neither team cheated the game. They were both teams are pretty good defensively. And I mean, this is something too. I mean, before the day, I was talking to a couple of friends, and they're like, Edmonton and Winnipeg could easily play in the Western Conference Final if they play like this. And that's the way. There's lots of competition. Don't get me wrong, but these are two very good hockey teams, and there too. I think that we've talked a lot about the lines, and I mean, Svechnikov with Lowry and Harkins was a very good line for the Jets today. I like Svechnikov on that line, and it still can give them balance and opportunities. So, I thought the Jets, did a very good job with what they had. I mean, McDavid had to make a ridiculous play to get it to overtime. Outside of that, the Jets were very good. They were solid defensively again. They had good goaltending. Special teams were a wash. Yes, they had an opportunity. And one thing, too, some folks are saying it. Luke mentioned it. Do I think I'd like to have a chance of looking at Yevgeny Svechnikov on that second power play unit where Riley Nash is? Yes, I do. But I think that's probably not a concern, because if Paul Stastny is back on Monday, I think Paul's going to go back into that spot. So, but for me, I would like to see Svechnikov there, or I would like to see a Jansen Harkins there. And that's not a knock against Riley Nash, but he wasn't brought in to be on the power play. So I think the Jets have a couple of more skilled options that they could test out there.
Mac Richter, are we going to talk about ESPN's power rankings? What the F? Ken, you can tee off on this. I'm just going to say the moment I saw where they had the Jets ranked, to me, that's like you take the piece of paper, you crumple it out, and you throw it out, and you ignore it. Like, hey, I've got all the respect for ESPN, and I mean, we had Emily Kaplan.
We have some friends over there, yeah.
We've got some friends, people we respect like crazy. That list was ridiculous. I mean, there's nothing else to be said about it. You aren't watching the game if you have the Winnipeg Jets ranked where you had them. I don't know how they come up with that. So to me, it's funny because people, and I get it. You know, you're a fan, you feel like you're disrespected, and you want to get up in arms about it. To me, it's like I don't have any disrespect in that, or I don't feel any disrespect in it as a Winnipegger or someone covers the team, because I look at that and I think, ooh, whoever built that list hasn't been watching the game and is getting exposed right now, because that's how everyone else here should feel. Don't you think, Ken?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't.
Right here. Wait, give them one of these, Ken. Give ESPN one of these.
There was some strange selections when the team that is leading a division is currently residing outside of what would be the playoff line. There's no doubt about that. But the lists get made. Things happen. We know that Winnipeg is certainly not at the. I don't think we're going to see the Jets a lot on ESPN Plus, and I'm guessing that their rankings may have had something to do with that. That's all. That's all I'm going to say.
Right here, Tracy O'Kranick found the answer. Someone said that ESPN thought it was the New York Jets. That's exactly what. That is the most plausible explanation I've heard so far of that, Ken. It's got to be. Ken, let's get into the lines now. We had a conversation about this the other day. I thought in the last game that, and I don't know if we disagreed on this, but I think I was a little more willing to dive in on this opinion. But I thought that Scheifele's line was the better of the two lines last game. I'm not saying that Pierre-Luc Dubois' line failed in any way in the last game, and I'm not saying that again tonight either. But I will say this. Dave Tippett wanted to switch up the matchups. He wanted to get Leon Draisaitl against the bigger body of Pierre-Luc Dubois. And then the switch up happened, and Mark Scheifele went up against Connor McDavid's line. And while I thought, as I've said, I think both those players, and I definitely think Leon Draisaitl was better on this night, and that's going to have something to do with, I think, what we all knew. That was a tired Oilers team we saw at the end of a road trip rolling into Winnipeg. But once again, I do think, matchup-wise, I thought Scheifele's line handled their assignment better on this evening than Pierre-Luc Dubois did. Now, we're splitting hairs when we're talking about players that, didn't score, and Pierre-Luc Dubois' line does not allow a goal from Leon Draisaitl, and maybe it's just because of the difference. Maybe Leon Draisaitl was a little more tired last game, but I thought Mark Scheifele's line handled Connor McDavid's assignment very well, and maybe even better. Well, I do think it was better than Pierre-Luc Dubois' line handled it the other day. I also think Mark Scheifele's line did better against the Draisaitl line, as long as it lasted in the previous game, than Pierre-Luc Dubois' line did here tonight. Again, not trying to bring down Pierre-Luc Dubois. I thought he had a great game. I guess the point I'm trying to make is I'm liking what I'm seeing from that Scheifele line.
Yeah, two quick things. I mean, the reason why I thought that Dubois and Connor's line was a little bit more effective in the other game, even though it was a 2-1 score, I guess, essentially in terms of the lines. But Kyle Connor had 10 shots on net the other day. That line was dominant. I mean, against McDavid. So. And Dubois' job head-to-head was very impressive. Of course, they had help on the back end from both defense pairings. But you're right. I mean, that's not a knock on either line. But I thought the other line, that the line that set the tempo was Dubois, and Scheifele and Ehlers got the goals, which is impressive. They did a great job, and their line played great in both games. What I would also say, what Mark Scheifele has done since going through the drought has been impressive. I mean, he 3-game point streak. He's been very effective, and let's not split hairs. In the head-to-head matchup last year, Mark Scheifele did not have a great amount of success against Connor McDavid. Tonight, they were even, and they were one up. They didn't even give up the goals. So I thought that they were very good. Very, very nice play. Drop pass. I mean, Connor was out there to start the play, but 2 really good drop passes and a great shot by Ehlers. Where there are a couple, some people will see overpassing at a few other areas. The play when Ehlers drove it wide and left it for Stanley, that was the right play because the guy coming in had a better angle to shoot. It just didn't happen on the play. So sometimes when it looks like overpassing, it wasn't that the wrong decision was made, but the execution didn't happen. So all to say, I thought that, I don't think the Dubois line was as offensively effective as they were the previous game, but that's also because more attention was being paid to them. And in some ways on the 5-on-5 game, it can be a tougher matchup because Draisaitl is so big and strong.
Was he ever tonight?
He was just a beast today. And I mean, I don't even think it mattered who was on his wing. Like, he basically was carrying the whole deal. And at one point he had a guy draped all over him, and he still got Hellebuyck had to make a ridiculous pad save. Draisaitl somehow got his hands back to the puck, and he got a great shot off. I mean, the passing, so much talk about the passing in the pregame commentary from Edmonton. I mean, Draisaitl made a couple of just absurd passing plays. And one other thing, Sean, we talked about the energy. Zach Hyman was way more noticeable tonight than he was on Tuesday. Yeah. Hyman was on his game, but the Jets did a very good job against those guys. So that tells us one other thing. They're a good team defensively and offensively. The Oilers are not a great 5-on-5 team. They feast on the man advantage. Tonight they didn't score. That's a credit to the Jets' special teams. They won a lot more of those draws, which killed off some of the ice time. But at 5-on-5, the Jets did an excellent job at both ends. They generated plenty, and they also limited the chances against. Were there still some high danger chances? Of course. Guess what? 2 of the best players in the league are going to get high danger chances, and it doesn't matter how well you play against them. So I think it was an impressive effort by both teams, as we mentioned, and I like the way both lines played. Like I said, I think that probably the other night I thought that the Dubois line was slightly better, and tonight I would agree that the Scheifele line was slightly better. But guess what? That goes back to our original premise. When the Jets have 1A and 1B going at the same time, they are a handful for opponents to try to handle. And then tonight, another great example. Lowry's line was excellent. So when you go 3 deep the way that the Jets can, they're tough to stop.
Mark Ald's having a good night.
Mark's on his game. Mark is on his game. Yeah, he's fired up.
The Jets and the Oilers tonight. He's got it running here. Hey, you were talking about Zach Hyman. I agree with you, and I think this is one of those things where you can see. And someone else mentioned Warren Foegele.
Foegele was great today too. Yeah,
he was great tonight too. So those are 2 of the pickups that I thought really should change things for the Oilers, because if you're the if you're the Winnipeg Jets, and let's just go back to last season in the playoffs. If Foegele and Hyman are in that series, I think that totally changes that series, right? Because there was just no depth, and they do have depth with those players. I do think really. Foegele makes that third line come alive, and Hyman kind of gives you that one more option up in the top that should allow you to keep Mcdavid and Draisaitl apart. I'm going to say this. If I was an Oilers fan, every time, other than if they're doing it at the end of the game to try and get a goal, if they're doing it, putting them on the power play or special teams or something like that, I hate it. I would hate it when they took and put those 2 players together, because I think you're just basically saying to the rest of the team, take the night off, we're going to try and win it with these guys. I thought it was important that they pushed it like that. But you were talking about Zach Hyman and showing well. I agree he showed well, but I think him playing well and showing well also showed a side of the Jets defense that was really important. Zach Hyman works those boards behind the net amongst the best in the league. One of the other things he does really well is takes it from straight behind the net, like we've seen Pierre-Luc Dubois try to do, and just take it right to the front of the net, jam it into the front of the net, and try and get it there. He tried to do that a couple of times. It didn't work. So what he started doing was getting the puck and taking it up the outside of the boards and trying to pass into the middle. That's a win if you're the Winnipeg Jets. If you don't have Zach Hyman just pushing his way, bullying his way to the front of the net and jamming away at the puck in that manner, you're doing the right thing. So whenever you see Zach Hyman, even though he's got the puck, even though he looks good doing it, even though he can play that game well along the boards, it's a less dangerous game than him just taking it straight to the front of the net and cramming it in. And I give full marks to the Winnipeg Jets. I was noticing that as the game was going on, all those efforts by the Oilers right behind the net to bring things right out in front, it was not happening. The Jets are taking care of the crease these days. They were not going to allow any backdoor tap-ins on Connor Hellebuyck on this night. And it was another one of those nights, Ken, where I looked at it and it was like Connor Hellebuyck wasn't going to let anything else in other than what we saw from Connor McDavid. And I guess that's what we should get into next, talk about that Connor McDavid goal. The debate is already on social media, on our Sportsnet Connected, on TSN. What's better, this goal or the one against the New York Rangers?
Well, the Rangers' goal was 1-on-4, so I mean, at least by flat out disadvantage, I guess. Yeah, I think the Rangers' goal was still a little bit better, but yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before. If you're standing relatively flat-footed against Connor McDavid, this is what can happen. And again, it was good coaching, getting out the elite player against the third pairing. That's a teachable moment. But my point is, this happened to a first pairing defense core in Edmonton with the Rangers. So it happens. I understand people are getting upset. Oh, well, why is Logan Stanley out there against McDavid? Well, you're out there to see if you can handle it. So that's where it's at. So just an exceptional play. This is what happens. You know what? Connor McDavid can take over games. That's why he is the best player in the game. That ability to accelerate through the neutral zone is tough to contain. The Jets did an excellent job of containing that speed for basically all but one shift in the last two games. So, and his other points came on the power play, including a two-man advantage. So I'll tell you what, Sean, if I had told you going into this week that Connor McDavid, the same guy that had 22 points in 9 games against the Jets last year, including 9 multi-point games in those regular season games, would get 1 point at even strength in the 2 games, you probably would have taken your chances if you were the Winnipeg Jets. So to me, I think they defended against McDavid and Draisaitl incredibly well, considering the circumstances.
Totally. Remind me to come back to that McDavid goal. I want to talk about it a little bit, but I like this question from Dryland Fisherman, Dryland, we've noticed you in the show quite a bit. Great to have you coming back and contributing. We love this. I like this question. So give me your list of guys who could play on the Jets top line on this team right now, Ken.
I'm not sure. I think a lot of guys could play there.
Well, right? Give me your list. Yeah, for sure. That's like, just give me the list of every guy on the Jets roster.
Is already. Oh, sorry. Yeah. With the Jets top line or whose top line?
He's just. I think the question he's basically asking is that don't think of a top line. Just go like, which players on this Jets roster of all the players that they have could you see being like, yep, that guy could play in some kind of combination of the top line. Who's on your list?
Well, I mean, probably 8 or 9 of the forwards, right? I mean, that they've had some combination of 9 forwards on that list. I mean, are they all top line players? That's a great line. Yes, that's the receipt. I'm going to keep Kyle Connor on the top line as well. So. Yeah, I mean, the Jets have got depth. I mean, and we've talked about this before. It's the Chris Kunitz syndrome. I mean, it's not always the most skilled player. I mean, Jansen Harkins might make a good first-line player. Maybe not today, but, down the road, I could see him growing into that kind of a job. But right now, he's playing where he needs to play. I mean, Yevgeny Svechnikov showed that he could have some success on the top line also. But I also think that Svechnikov is a good fit on the third line, which is exactly what we saw in these 2 games. I mean, I love his physical nature down low. He was in that one. Speaking of cycling shifts, Sean, he was in a battle down low with Cody Ceci and Duncan Keith for about a minute at the one point, and he took the puck behind the net 3 or 4 times, got tackled once, got right back up, and went again. So, and it's not out of the question that Svechnikov goes to the fourth line at some point. It's either going to be Svechnikov or Harkins when Stastny comes back. So There's lots of options. It depends on who's going at which time. The Jets, I don't think I think they're still working on what their optimal line combinations are. But right now, I would say there are at least 8 players that could be used in that role. Who are your thoughts, or what are your thoughts on the subject?
So I'll go. I thought I know I said this before, and I still kind of stand by this. I like the idea of if guys have earned something, let them earn it until they kind of falter. So I didn't like the idea of taking Svechnikov off the first line, but I'll say this: I think Blake Wheeler did some good stuff tonight. Made some really good positional plays. It was right towards the end of the game where he comes off that face-off and kind of just fights the puck positionally, gets it to the front of the net, and they get a really good chance out of that. So, I mean, Blake Wheeler's on there. So the guys who are on the top line right now, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Blake Wheeler, Kyle Connor, clearly can go there. Mark Scheifele can clearly go there. Ehlers, we've petitioned for years about, getting an opportunity in those spots. Andrew Kopp has shown that he can do it. Paul Stastny, sure, we know when he comes back, can do that. Svechnikov, I think, has shown. I mean, if they moved Svechnikov back up to that top line tomorrow, I'd have absolutely no problem with that at all. And Harkins, I think, can do it as well. Vesalainen, I don't think has shown enough this year that you would put him in that spot. Nash, you wouldn't want him there. Lowry, I just don't think that's a spot for him. So, I mean, for me, it's 9 guys that you can roll into that spot there. I know that Dryland had said that it would be 12. I don't agree with it there, but I do like the idea of, and we talked a little bit about this, but I've been pretty vocal about this. I like the idea of like fitting guys in to get depth. So one of the things I liked about the idea of keeping Svechnikov there is if they'd already tried Lowry with Wheeler and Scheifele. Well, you've got the built-in between, and you like your size. Paul Maurice has said he likes the size that line has. So if you've got Lowry and Wheeler, and then you get a guy like Paul Stastny coming back into the lineup, and you get a really good defensively responsible player who's really smart, who knows how to play with Blake Wheeler, and you get the size that Lowry has and the ability to lean that those two players have in he and Blake Wheeler. I'd be interested to see what that does. And on a night like tonight, Ken, I wonder what a line like that, what kind of difference a line like that would make. If we're talking about now, we've seen enough from the Edmonton Oilers and the Winnipeg Jets that we think these are two teams we could potentially see meeting in the conference finals. And I say that knowing full well that the Vegas Golden Knights are coming and that we got to give respect to
Minnesota,
the Minnesota Wild, to St. Louis, and the Colorado Avalanche are coming as well. But if these are two teams we see, potentially meeting up at some point, if you had a third line like that, what kind of difference could that line make against a Ryan McLeod, Warren Foegele, and Zach Kassian? I think it could be a big difference in the difference maker, offensively on a night like tonight, which is why I kind of like that idea. And look, do I think that that a first line in the NHL or on the Winnipeg Jets starts with Evgeny Svechnikov? Absolutely not. But what I do think is that the model of having two really great players who fit together, which is, in my mind, Connor is playing the best hockey he's ever played, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's playing with Pierre-Luc Dubois. But adding Svechnikov in onto that trio still maintains one of the best lines I think I've seen so far in the NHL this year, and allows you to spread the talent out and come in that one extra wave that I don't think a lot of teams are going to be able to handle, Ken.
One last thing. Nobody has been beating the drum for Yevgeny Svechnikov more than I have this year. That started at the pro tryout camp. I loved when they signed him to the Moose contract, and I knew that he was getting a PTO. But here's one thing. Yevgeny Svechnikov has played 0 shifts in his career against Connor McDavid, and I would be willing to bet, I'm not a betting person, but I'd be willing to bet that could have played a role in the decision on how the lines were made up for this series. I think that in time...
Say that again.
Svechnikov would have never, ever had a shift against Connor McDavid and that kind of speed in his career to this point. So
Yeah.
am I surprised at all that
Great
Blake
point.
Wheeler got the job? No, that was probably a big part of the decision. And that's not a knock against Svechnikov. I think he is going to get time against him at some point.
Sure, but here's the question, Ken. The question is whether or not up to that, and I agree with you. He hadn't drawn an assignment like that, so that's a big question mark going into those.
It's the toughest assignment in hockey.
For sure. But my question is based on what that line had done through that point that year. Did he maybe deserve the chance to show that he could, or at least fail, try and fail, or potentially try and succeed?
Sure. I mean, it's a fine argument, and I'm not disputing it. I'm just telling you there was reasoning behind the decision that was made, I believe. And at some point, could I easily see him getting a chance against him at some point? Yes, but we always talk about coaches putting players in positions to succeed. Blake Wheeler was excellent on Tuesday's game on that line. He was a physical force. He was moving his feet. Today that line wasn't generating quite as much, but they still did plenty of good things in the game. So,
for sure.
And also the point is, Svechnikov still played well in this other role, which is an important thing to find out because we didn't really know if there was much chemistry there between Svechnikov and Lowry. So, again, this isn't always about game 16. It's about finding things out for when you need things done down the stretch, and it just gives the Jets another viable option to consider as they look towards getting things that are important. We've heard all about identity and all these things, and again, I thought Svechnikov had an excellent game, and this is what you love to see, Sean, because we've talked about this before. If a player is moved off a line where he's playing well and the coach says he's playing well and he's given a different role, sometimes guys don't handle that very well and their play deteriorates. You know what can help Svechnikov get back on that line at some point? Playing the way he did in the 2 games when he played on a line with Lowry. So that's how you handle things. You don't just go say, woe is me, and hang the lip because you don't like it. If you don't like it, play better or continue to play well and you'll get more chances down the road. Actually, I'm a trombone player, not an oboe player. But thank you, James. I love it that you're paying attention.
Kent, you're dominating. Hey, do you watch Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
No.
You ever watch that show?
I know it.
You've heard me beat the drum on this before. Now I'm the one beating the drum. Anyone who's a Always Sunny in Philadelphia fan out there, I love that show. Caitlin Olsen, Dee Reynolds off the show, is in Winnipeg right now, and I don't know why. So if someone can tell me why that is, I'm guessing she's shooting a movie or something like that. Anyways, it reminded me of a scene in there where they're like trying to establish dominance over each other, and they think that the higher you hold your neck when you talk to the other guy helps, and also whoever chews their gum the loudest, so there's this scene where they're all standing there holding their necks up and just chewing these wads of gum as loud as they can. And I thought the Kenny and Renny version of you establishing dominance is cranking your mic way up over mine. I don't think I need a mic upgrade. This is like a pretty
I've turned mine down again. I don't know what's happening here.
We'll figure it all out. Hey, I wanted to get back to the whole McDavid goal thing. I honestly think McDavid, his speed is so at another level that if he senses those moments in the game where defense are just a little bit flat-footed or there's just too much space, he can take advantage of you like that. And I like that. I like that exists in the game, because if that exists with Connor McDavid, young kids are going to see that. They're going to see what he does to succeed in those positions, and they're going to realize it's possible, and they're going to start trying to do that kind of stuff too, or build their game based on that, like change of speed and add that into their game. My whole take on it is like, and maybe we could get into this just quickly, Ken, but the whole John Tortorella, Connor McDavid needs to shut up. I hate that argument, and I say that in the way that you can play Connor McDavid without taking penalties and still succeed. And I think the Jets over the last 2 games are the perfect example of that. But I'm not one of these guys who would sit there and complain that the refs were killing the flow of the game. Like, he's the best player in the world, and if you need to like hook and slash and take him down to contain him, and the refs' response to that is, well, we can't give them another penalty tonight, that's ridiculous. Like, you need, like, I want skill like that on display at every single moment of the game. And if you can't keep up with that guy, then he's blowing by you and scoring. And that's what we should be seeing night in and night out. And again, I go back to the Jets, who played absolutely phenomenally defensively against him. They showed it can be done. You play properly, you play it right, you can do it. All this hacking and slashing and all this kind of stuff that goes on to try and contain Connor McDavid, the old hack-a-shack approach, I guess, if you will. That argument about, like, just shut up and play, yeah, maybe he doesn't need to complain as much, but if they were calling the game the way they should, there would be no reason to complain, is my counter to that. So you can't shut up about reffing if it's not being called properly. Someone should be singing it from the rafters, and if it's not Connor McDavid, then someone else out there should be advocating for the guy, as I think the media is doing in a lot of cases. I wanted to ask you about Dylan Demelo. I thought that was low-key a phenomenal game for Dylan Demelo. What did you see out of his game tonight?
Yeah, really, really solid. And he made one really good play along one of many really good plays where he absolutely seals along the boards. It's a 2-on-1, and if the puck gets through, it may be a breakaway. But he made the read in time so that the pass across was never going to be an option because of his body positioning, the way that he attacked the forward at the blue line. I thought it was an exceptional play. He's made a lot of really smart reads in terms of finding outlet passes and things of that nature. So for me, I would say I think that the Oilers had the Jets defense core as a whole spinning a little bit more. They were turning and chasing a little bit more than the other night. But overall, I thought the Jets defense still handled themselves very well when you consider who they were playing against. I mean, there are going to be chances given up. And that's just simply the way it goes. I thought that Dylan Demelo was very steady. And, I mean, we'll also say this. I mean, a lot of people's views vary on fighting, but Logan Stanley's ability to stand in there with Zach Kassian that's going to be something that people take notice about throughout the NHL. And we were talking about it the other day again with Scott Billeck. A couple of really good exit passes from Logan Stanley through the neutral, or in the defensive zone to the neutral zone again today. But yeah, I mean, Dylan Demelo is a guy who's never going to get a lot of headlines, but he's played a lot of steady games this year. And when Dylan Demelo is the fifth defenseman on your hockey club, the Jets have a pretty deep defense core. I mean, those are just the facts. I mean, yeah. Demelo has had quietly had a very strong start to the season.
What stood out to me and what I thought of right away is how he kind of jumps into the hole and scores that goal that ties up the game against the LA Kings. What I thought about him is what I love about Dylan Demelo is how he plays in these tight games like this. Right. Like when room is scarce, when things are tight, when people are gripping sticks, it seems to be a time when Dylan Demelo comes alive. I like this game, and I know there's going to be someone out there who's going to say something about the fact that he was one of the players who was on the ice when Connor McDavid scores that goal. And yes, he is. It's kind of tough because he goes slow.
What did you want him to do about it?
Exactly. Yeah, your own player is in the way. Your own player has him off. I just thought that he was phenomenal. That play you're talking about where he cuts off the 2-on-1, maybe even a 3-on-1, it was a super dangerous play. But I just thought, that play that he draws the penalty from Ryan McLeod, I love that play. I love his kind of ability to get into their faces and the way he's kind of like the savvy veterans, like, great job, kid. Thanks for the PP. It was just another way to kind of get into his head like that.
Yeah, Benson. It was Benson.
Sorry, Benson.
Oh, my God. And one quick one on him. Sorry, I don't want to be... We watched Tyler Benson the other day as part of the scratch patrol with Colton Sevier, and he was giving her and just great speed. And oh my goodness, as someone who had to be part of some healthy scratch skates over the years, oh my God, you know how hard the guy's working. And then on back-to-back shifts, you just get out of the box and you get right back in. You're thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to get another shift. It was just a tough sequence for him. I think he did get one or two in the third, but oh my goodness. When you're in that situation, you're thinking, Like, the only thing that could have been worse for Benson is if the Jets had scored on one of those power plays, because then basically what you can do is go to the room, take off your gear, and wait for the next chance to get out of the press box. I mean, that literally is how you're feeling when you're forward in that situation.
I thought you were going to say, go to the room, get your stuff off, and get ready for the bus.
I was going to say Bakersfield. Oh man, it's a tough. That was a tough sequence for him. But I mean, again, learning.
John Woodcroft's brother.
Two offensive zone penalties. You're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Trying to make things happen, but boy, oh boy, you got to be careful when you're in that situation. That the fine line between being tentative and being assertive, he was not able to find it in this game tonight, unfortunately for him.
Yeah, and you know what, we talked about Stanley, and I thought, that's a tough one for Stanley. I don't think it's a bad play. I mean, you see what Mcdavid does is he uses his speed, and as soon as he gets a guy to commit his stick into an area, he just throws the puck into an area where that guy's stick isn't, and he's already going in that area, and then by the time that guy goes and turns, he's already retrieved the puck and cut around him. Like, I don't look at Logan Stanley and think, man, he screwed up on that play. He had like the best player in the game just go by him, and like he's done to so many other players. I wanted to throw something out there just that I thought was, kind of to counter him being the guy who gets burnt tonight for the game-tying goal. But that play, and I go back to it, that play against LA, because I don't think you probably talked about it a little bit, but that awareness play where LA is going in and he breaks up the play, but has the wherewithal not just to break up the play, but to throw it into the soft spot up ice that is not so hard that it gets to the LA D-men, but is just far enough that they can't get to it, but is past the first layer of the LA Kings players, allowing the Jets to skate into that puck with speed, is a low-key, brilliant play that in that time where you're not only defending and breaking up a play, but to be like, not only can I break this up, but I can create an odd man rush going the other way. There's not enough to be said about that play by Logan Stanley. And in the end, Demelo scores, but it starts with Logan Stanley breaking it up, sending it back the other way. The Winnipeg Jets have 2 points in the bank right now that they would not have had if not for that brilliant play by Logan Stanley. So give credit where it's due on that. Ken, did you want to talk a little bit just about Connor Hellebuyck? I know I talked about him a little bit more, but anything that you can add that we haven't talked about already?
Yeah, I mean, just one thing for me that really has stood out, and Paul Maurice referenced it in the postgame, his ability to fight through traffic. Something early on in the year, Sean, we talked about this, the games in Anaheim, the games in San Jose, they were feasting in the slot, their ability to get to the net, and Hellebuyck was having trouble getting through on those pucks and getting his body into the lanes. But man, he's so dialed in right now, and it's just been impressive to watch. He's been square to so many pucks. He's been so technically sound, and just like I said, he seems so laser focused. And that's 6 consecutive games of 2 or fewer allowed for Connor Hellebuyck, and that's scary. That's a scary proposition for his opponents. Tomorrow's a great opportunity for Eric Comrie to build on what he's done so far. He's had 4 solid starts this year, including those 3 in a row at the start of the homestand. The Jets are good. They spent a lot in the last 2 games, but they're going to be facing, I understand what people are thinking in the chat room. The Canucks have lost 5 in a row. Everyone in Vancouver wants to fire everyone. But this is a team that is desperate. They're in desperation mode. So were it not for their poor discipline last night against the Colorado Avalanche, they actually were playing a pretty good hockey game in that game.
Did you watch that game?
I was listening to it on. I didn't watch it, but I had it on the NHL Live app. So
I watched it. They played a really, really good game. So I mean, I don't know. I'm not quite sure about their ability to replicate that effort.
Sure.
It's one of those things where they finally stand up and they play a good game, and then you don't get rewarded. Weak teams, when they don't get rewarded, I think can regress right away again.
That's fair.
Which was one thing I give Paul Maurice coach teams credit for. He's really good at keeping teams pushing even when they're not getting results. He's always been good at that. It'll be interesting to see what happens out of that. But you're right. If they play like they did against Colorado, it's not going to be a cakewalk. But I just like the way that the Jets handle games like this. I think that I know people like to say they play down to their opponents, and I think that happens. But this year, it seems that even when they do play down against them, that defensive structure allows games from getting out of hand and puts them in a good position to pull those games out.
For sure. And one quick one, too. I was wondering the same kind of thing, and I was wondering the same thing. I think I even asked Paul Maurice about it, if you're the Rangers, don't you try to take a penalty there? And that's like, you got 4, it's on a 1-on-4, don't you try to haul the guy down? But it goes back to your point, Sean. Because of where McDavid put the puck and because of the speed that he is skating at, it's by the time you think, man, I should trip this guy, he's by you. Forget it. It's too late. You go from thinking, I've got this guy right where I want him, and then it's like the Roadrunner. Meep, meep, he's by you. See ya.
Yeah.
So I understand why people would want that. And of course, on your couch and in the press box, that's what we always think. But it's a lot easier said than done, I think, is my observation on that front. But, man, I was thinking the same thing in the Ranger game. I'm like, okay, well, maybe Trouba can't haul him down, but by the time he gets to the fourth person, isn't that person thinking can opener? Like, let's just put this guy on his behind and it's going to be over. But like I said, sometimes it's by the time you blink, it's too late. So I'll be very curious. I mean, I think it's another good test. The Jets have, historically in the last little while have played pretty well in Vancouver. From what I remember on a lot of those road games. On the back-to-back, there are going to be some challenges for sure, but I think it's another important, like you said, to me, we've talked a lot about the maturity of the Jets, both on the homestand and now in this first game of this road trip. If you stick to your structure, if you're the Winnipeg Jets, you should be able to stay in the game long enough to get your legs underneath you and then find a push and kind of let your offensive game take over. But to me, it's all about the defensive structure. The Jets foundation got a couple, a little bit of augmentation, I would say, in these last two games. And now that's what you have to lean on in a tough situation in a back-to-back against what should be a desperate hockey team.
It's the one thing that I'm interested in here, Ken, is because I go back to this and I think the Jet structure is just absolutely phenomenal. And it's again, I give credit to the likes of Kyle Connor, especially, who's still putting up points the way he is, but not falling out of that structure. I think he stayed very committed to it throughout the year. But just, to the Jets in general, who are a team that we've seen in the past like to run and gun. They've seemed comfortable in that vein for a long time. I had always thought that changing that mindset is what it was going to take to get this team to the next level. It looks like they've done that. What I'm interested to see here is that, and I'll ask you this, Ken, I don't think this team looks like the 2018 team. They look different. I know there's elements of what they do that is trying to replicate that, but they're a different looking team. This is a version of the Winnipeg Jets I've never seen before. And it's an impressive one. And I guess I say it like the one thing that I think about this is it's going to be interesting to see down the stretch, especially against the Central Division teams, how teams start to play the Winnipeg Jets once they've had some game tape on them, right? Because if we haven't seen this before, a lot of teams in the league haven't seen this before. So when they come in to play the Winnipeg Jets, what's it going to take to beat that team? I thought the Oilers tonight and this game was a real example of you play back-to-back. The Oilers went and saw what the Jets brought the other night, saw, okay, this is what we're going to have to do to beat this team, and stayed patient to get past them. So I'm wondering if as the year goes on, and maybe that just is naturally going to happen either way, but if you remember the game against Minnesota, what was it, 6-5 in overtime? Yep. Was that the final score? Yep. I wonder if you're going to see games like that start to disappear as teams get to understand who this Jets team is, and if we're actually going to see the scoring go down on the Jets side of things, because teams are going to come in and know that if we're playing this team, if we're going to beat them, it's going to be a 1-0, 2-1 kind of game, because that's what the Winnipeg Jets look like. Think the St. Louis Blues game. Think the LA Kings game. Think the Oilers game tonight. We're starting to see a pretty good cross-section of teams coming in and playing a specific style. Think the Blues game. I think there's going to be a recognition of what it takes to beat this Jets team. And if you're a Jets fan, I'd caution, don't fall or get frustrated by the fact that maybe that we start to see a lot of those kind of games. I know you love that high-scoring Winnipeg Jets team, but this is a team that knows how to win. I just think there's going to be a recognition of the style of hockey that they play, and you will see that style of hockey mirrored and reflected by good teams that come into town knowing that's what it's going to take to beat the Winnipeg Jets.
Sure, and that goes back to the conversation about the Islanders, right? So the Islanders are, sub 500 team right now, but they had a terribly long road trip to start the year. Guess what? They play the same way all the time, right? So that's the thing for Winnipeg. We've got a glimpse of what the template looks like. Now, how consistent can you be within that template? And just to kind of piggyback your point on the 2017-2018 team versus this one right now, Paul Maurice also discussed this week earlier before they hit the road. The benefit for the Jets now, Connor Hellebuck is a seasoned starting goalie. He's not a guy who is early in his career trying to establish himself in a Vezina caliber type of season. The Jets' young forwards are in their prime. Yes, Pierre-Luc Dubois is still only 23 years old, but at the time when they went to the conference final, Patrick Laine was just turned 20 years old when he was being asked to try to carry a line at certain points against the Vegas Golden Knights. Now you're looking at a team that has, Mark Scheifele's 28 years old. Nikolai Ehlers has been in the league for a long time. Adam Lowry is a well-established player. And you still have an experienced defense core. It's not as dynamic as the one that had Dustin Byfuglien on it and Jacob Trouba on it and Tyler Myers on it on the right side. But they're mobile and smart and mature, and they have a physical side to them. So, in some ways, the Jets can be better in certain areas just because of the age. We've talked about this for the last 2 years. Can this kind of peak all at the same time, where you have your young players are ready enough, your veterans aren't, are still contributing at a high level, and then your young guy, and then your guys that are in their prime can play at their very peak. That's the thing that we've always been trying to figure out with the Winnipeg Jets. So far, they look like they can be one of the better teams in the West, but now you got to sustain it, right? We're not even into the first quarter complete yet, but we're getting close to it, and we're also getting very close to the historical time. American Thanksgiving is coming up. We're going to be in the States when that happens, and a lot of the times the teams that are in the playoffs at that time, the majority of them advance to the playoffs. That's not a guarantee, but it's a pretty good precursor of what you're going to see. And right now the Jets are well within that group, but a losing streak in the next week, now all of a sudden you're on the bubble again. That's the beauty of what we're seeing right now, both in the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference.
Yeah. Excellent stuff. Ken, great job tonight as usual. And once again, I was saying, I thought after our last show and the divorce lawyer checked in on us.
That's good. We have good news. We have good news on that front.
Yeah,
we have good news.
The divorce lawyer was sniffing around. Kenny and I have kissed and made up. Everything's fine on this end here.
I can't afford a lawyer anyway.
I love that show. That was a good show. As I love this show, I was saying to Ken after we got off last time, it feels like, when we were doing this show last year, everything was great. We stopped for the off season. It was great to get back, but it felt like it took a little while to kind of hit our stride. I feel like the show has hit its stride. One thing I can definitely say, Ken, is our chat room has hit the stride and is just hitting it out of the park.
They're in mid-season form.
Show, they are in rounding into playoff form here. True. I love it. It's great stuff. Thank you so much.
Sorry, one quick one. Just I've got my November mailbag is open for my Sportsnet.ca column, folks, and I hate to say it, but it is not. My inbox is not full yet, so we still got 2 full days to get your Jets questions in for the mailbag for the month of November. So hit me up on the Twitter DMs or at my email at kenjr@shaw.ca. Sorry, we need a little we've had a really busy day here, but I needed a little self-promotion to make sure that column on Sunday looks good. So get those questions in. We know that you've got lots on your mind. It fires through the chat room, and if you haven't contributed to the mailbag, I try to get to as many questions as possible, and if I don't get them into the mailbag, I will definitely get you a response via DM or email for sure.
Well, you know what? Let's continue that self-promotion, Ken, because that show that we had, we've got those moments where we do our long-form show, which we did earlier today, and we had Aaron Portzline and Jim Hewson on. Jim Hewson was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I had said I got off and I was talking with some of the one of the Hockey Night in Canada camera guys who's been working with Jim for years. I may not have laughed as much in an interview as I did with him. He's low key, like really, really funny without trying to be funny. If you haven't watched that interview or listened to that interview on the podcast, do yourself a favor and go listen to it. Beyond that, I learned stuff from Aaron Portzline about Pierre-Luc Dubois that I did not know. If you want to dig into Pierre-Luc Dubois and what he's doing this year, go listen to those interviews. That was great stuff. I'm so proud of those shows that we do, Ken, and I'm proud of that one. It was a great one. So check that out if you haven't. And if you haven't gone and subscribed to our channel, what are you doing? Go do it. You're missing out. And finally, go click if you appreciated what you saw here tonight. I see so many people taking part in the chat room, and the likes never match the chat room. I'd like to get to a point one day where that's what's happening. So if you can, go leave us a like. It helps us with it helps us reach people. We want to bring more people in here. So go click subscribe, click like. We appreciate all you so much. Thank you for joining us. Hope you had a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow night after the game. Hope you're ready for a late one. It's a Friday night. You should be, because what better place to spend a Friday night than with Kenny and Renny, as it was a great night to spend Thursday here. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.